Hey guys, tonight we're going to drift back in time, to a world lit only by fire and ruled by iron. Imagine the cold sweat on the walls of a castle chamber, the heavy scent of wood smoke and damp wool, and the hushed, anxious whispers of a kingdom holding its breath. You're at the very centre of it all, a princess, a name that echoes with fairy tales. But tonight, we pull back the heavy tapestry of romance to see the cold, hard stone of reality behind it. The story may solve mysteries you never had an explanation for, showing you a life far stranger and more complex than any storybook version. It was a life of privilege, yes, but also one of profound restriction and staggering duty, beginning from the very first breath you take. So, before you explore the story with me, please take a moment to help me subscribe to the channel. Like and share this video, or maybe leave a comment below, but make sure you do it when you really like what I bring to you. I would love to see where and when you started watching this story, or even just a kind word if you feel so inclined. Now, let's keep the lights as soft as possible. Turn on the fan for a gentle sound to help the story feel more emotional, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. The first sound you register is not a gentle coo or a loving murmur. It is the sound of a collective, held breath, followed by a quiet, rustling sigh of disappointment. You've arrived, in a great, heaving effort. You've been brought into a world of flickering torchlight, shadows that dance like giants on the stone walls, and the low, guttural prayers of a priest in the corner. The air is thick with the scent of sweat, blood, and crushed herbs meant to ward off evil spirits, and, more practically, the ever-present stench of medieval life. You're born not into a quiet, private moment, but onto a public stage. Your mother, the Queen, is exhausted on a vast, curtained bed, but the room is crowded. There are midwives with knowing, tired eyes, ladies-in-waiting whose expressions are carefully neutral, and a grim-faced physician who likely did more harm than good. They all press in, peering at you. This new piece of royal flesh, the midwife, her hands rough but sure, holds you up. "A healthy girl, your majesty," she announces, her voice attempting a cheerfulness it cannot quite achieve. A girl, a princess, not the longed-for prince, the heir who would secure the dynasty and prevent a succession crisis. Your father, the king, who'd been waiting just outside the heavy oak door, receives the news with a tight jaw and a curt nod. He may not even enter. His work is done for now, and the result is useful, but not ideal. You, in your first moments, are already a political calculation. You're not just a daughter. You're a future treaty, a potential peace accord, a walking, breathing parcel of land and influence to be traded for a strategic advantage. While a prince is a sword and a shield for the kingdom, you're its finest silk thread, to be woven into the tapestry of European power. This is your value, and it is determined before you can even focus your eyes. You're immediately handed off, not to your mother, but to a team of women whose entire world now revolves around you. Your first sensation is the rough, scratchy feel of the linen swaddling cloth being wound tightly around your tiny body, pinning your arms to your sides and your legs straight. This was common practice, believed to encourage straight limbs and prevent a baby from scratching itself or, heaven forbid, wandering off. It sounds less like childcare and more like preparing an item for shipping. Your new home is the royal nursery. Forget any image of pastel colours and fluffy toys. The nursery is a formal suite of rooms, often located in a secure but drafty part of the castle. It is the headquarters of your early life, and it is run with the precision of a military campaign. Your mother, the Queen, will visit. Her visits are state occasions. She might hold you for a moment, her fingers cool on your skin, her magnificent gown smelling of lavender and cloves, before handing you back to the professionals. Her primary duty is not to nurture you, but to recover from childbirth and prepare to conceive again, hopefully producing a son next time. To this end, you're not even fed by her. You're passed to the most important person in your infant life, your wet nurse. This isn't just any local woman. A royal wet nurse was a highly sought-after and scrutinised position. She was often a noblewoman herself, a lady of good family whose own child had recently been born, and was usually sent away to be nursed by someone of lesser rank. Her health, diet, and even her moral character were rigorously examined. Her milk was believed to transmit not just nutrients, but qualities of character. A calm, virtuous wet nurse would theoretically produce a calm, virtuous princess. She becomes your source of comfort, your food, your warmth. Her face is the first one you learn to recognise. Her heartbeat, the one that soothes you in the long, cold nights. This outsourcing of feeding was a purely practical matter. Breastfeeding was known to act as a form of natural contraception, and the kingdom couldn't afford for the queen to have a gap of 2 years between attempts at producing a male heir. Your world is a small, enclosed space of stone, wood, and wool. You lie in a heavy wooden cradle, often extravagantly carved, with a high, arching canopy to protect you from the constant drafts that snake through the castle corridors. Rockers, women employed for the sole purpose of sitting by your cradle for hours, gently push it back and forth. Their slow, rhythmic movements a constant backdrop to your existence. As you grow, your senses take in this strange world. You watch the complex, violent, and holy scenes woven into the massive tapestries that cover the walls to provide a sliver of insulation. These aren't pictures of cute animals. They're depictions of the Battle of Hastings or the martyrdom of a saint. Your first lessons in history and faith absorbed before you can even speak. When your first teeth begin to push through your gums, causing you to fuss and cry, you aren't given a plastic ring to chew on. You're given something far more symbolic. A popular and quirky tidbit of the era was to give highborn babies a piece of polished coral, often strung on a necklace or attached to a silver rattle. It was cool and hard, perfect for teething, but it was also believed to possess magical properties, warding off the evil eye, sickness, and demonic spirits. In a world with a terrifyingly high rate of infant mortality, where a simple fever could be a death sentence, any form of protection, practical or supernatural, was embraced. Your very toys are a form of spiritual armour. You're rarely alone, yet profoundly lonely. You're surrounded by a retinue, ladies of the nursery, chamber women, laundresses, and grooms who manage the pony you will one day learn to ride. They see to your every need, but their affection is tempered by deference and duty. Historians still argue whether the apparent emotional distance between medieval royal parents and their children was a true reflection of their feelings or simply a consequence of a society where duty and lineage overshadowed personal sentiment. Were there stolen moments of genuine parental love, unrecorded by chroniclers who only cared about treaties and successions? Or were you truly raised by a committee, your emotional bonds forged with servants who could be dismissed on a whim? The truth is likely somewhere in between, a complex tapestry of formal distance and fleeting, private warmth. As you take your first wobbly steps on the cold flagstones, your world is already defined by ritual and expectation. You are learning to speak, but you're also learning the subtle shifts in tone that denote rank. You're learning to eat, but the food is not simple. You're given paps, mushy concoctions of bread soaked in milk, almond milk, or even wine, pre-chewed by a servant to make it digestible. It's a far cry from a modern jar of pureed pears, and perhaps explains a lot about medieval cuisine. Everything about your existence, from the clothes on your back to the prayers said over your cradle, is designed to mould you. You are not a child discovering the world. You're a princess being prepared for it. Your every gurgle is analysed. Your every step is monitored. You are the kingdom's investment, its most delicate diplomatic tool, and your training has already begun. The wobbly steps you took on the cold flagstone soon become more certain, more measured. As you grow from a toddler into a small child, the world of the nursery, with its rocking ladies and coral beads, begins to recede. It's replaced by a more structured, more demanding reality. The constant observation you felt since birth now sharpens, focusing not just on your health and safety, but on your every word, your posture, your potential. Around the age of 5 or 6, your formal education begins, and you learn quickly that this is not about discovering your passions or exploring your own mind. It is a process of meticulous construction, like a master artisan building a priceless loot. Every piece of knowledge, every skill you acquire, is chosen to make you a more valuable asset in the grand and ruthless game of international politics. Your life becomes a timetable, your days a series of lessons administered by a host of tutors and governesses. Your morning does not begin with cartoons or play. It begins with prayer. The castle chaplain, a man with a low, droning voice and the scent of old parchment and incense clinging to his robes, becomes a central figure in your life. Long before you can properly read or write, you learn to recite prayers in Latin. The words are a meaningless collection of sounds to your young ears. Pater noster, qui es in caelis. But you learn to mimic the cadence and the solemnity perfectly. Religion is the bedrock of your world, the justification for your family's power, and the framework for your moral universe. You learn the lives of the saints, particularly the female martyrs known for their piety, chastity, and obedience. These are your role models. Women who suffered beautifully and died virtuously. The lesson is clear. A princess, like a saint, must endure her fate with grace and submission. Your first forays into literacy are guided by these same religious principles. You don't learn with colourful picture books. You might start with a quirky little device called a horn book. Imagine a small wooden paddle, shaped a bit like a cutting board. On it is a single sheet of parchment, on which is written the alphabet, the Lord's Prayer, and perhaps some numbers. This precious page is protected by a wafer-thin translucent sheet of polished animal horn, which is where it gets its name. It's a durable, portable, and frankly, quite a dull first reader. It's the medieval equivalent of a flashcard, only much heavier and smelling faintly of cow. From there, you graduate to your primary textbook, which is also your personal prayer book, the Book of Hours. This is a mainstream and central part of your education. These books were often breathtaking works of art, commissioned for a royal child, with hand-painted illustrations known as illuminations in brilliant blues, reds, and gold leaf. As you trace the letters of the Psalms with your finger, you are learning to read God's word, the only word that truly matters. There is no library of fairy tales or adventure stories for you. Reading is a tool for devotion, not for escape. Alongside the language of God, you must learn the languages of men. Latin is essential for understanding the Mass and for any formal correspondence, but you must also learn French, which for much of the Middle Ages was the language of courtly culture, poetry, and high society across Europe. Your fluency is a mark of your breeding, and then there is the language of your potential future. If you are betrothed at a young age to a Spanish prince, a tutor who speaks Castilian is brought to court. If a German duke is a likely candidate, you begin stumbling through the harsh consonants of his native tongue. Your mind is being moulded to be adaptable, to be able to land in a foreign court and communicate with your new husband and his powerful vassals. You are, in essence, being trained for the most important diplomatic posting of your life. While your mind is being filled with languages and scripture, your hands are never idle, for hours every day. You sit with your governess and the ladies-in-waiting in the solar, the private sitting room for the women of the castle. Here, you learn the intricate arts of needlepoint and embroidery. This is not a quaint hobby. It is a vital feminine virtue. An occupied hand cannot get into mischief, and the ability to produce beautiful textiles was a sign of a well-run, prosperous, and pious household. You start with simple stitches on scraps of linen, your small fingers clumsy with the needle. The ladies cluck their tongues and patiently correct you. Over years, you will graduate to working with fine silk and threads of real gold and silver, perhaps adding a few stitches to a massive tapestry that will one day hang in a great hall, or embroidering a fine altar cloth for the chapel. It is painstaking, repetitive work designed to teach you patience, precision, and the art of sitting still and quiet for very long periods. All excellent qualities for a future queen consort. Your education in the arts extends to music and dance. A music master arrives to teach you an instrument suitable for a lady. The gentle harp, the elegant lute, or perhaps a clavichord, an early keyboard instrument. You learn to sing ballads of chivalry and courtly love, your voice a carefully cultivated tool for charming a court. Then comes the dance master, often a severe man with ramrod-straight posture, who teaches you the formal, intricate steps of the dances you'll be expected to perform at feasts and celebrations. There is the slow, processional basse dance, or the more levelly estampie. This is not about expressing yourself. It is about demonstrating grace, poise, and knowledge of courtly etiquette. One wrong step, one moment of awkwardness could bring shame upon your family. It feels less like fun and more like a high-stakes geometry problem performed in heavy velvet. The pressure not to trip over your own feet in front of a visiting ambassador is immense, but perhaps the most important and least glamorous. Part of your education is in household management. Historians still argue whether the extensive training of noblewomen in this area was meant to empower them as capable rulers of their domestic sphere, or simply to ensure they remained confined within it, becoming highly efficient managers rather than political players. Whatever the intention, the reality is that you are being trained to be the CEO of a massive and complex organisation. A royal castle is not just a home, it is a military fortress, a political capital, and a vast economic engine, all in one. You begin by shadowing your governess or mother, learning the immense logistics involved. You learn how to provision a household of hundreds of people, calculating the tons of wheat for bread, the barrels of wine and ale, the sides of salted beef needed to get through a winter. You learn to manage the vast storerooms of linens, the supply of beeswax candles, the stores of spices that were worth more than gold. You learn to keep accounts, to balance budgets, and to oversee a veritable army of servants, from the highest-ranking steward down to the lowliest scullion boy. This is your destiny, to efficiently and flawlessly manage the domestic world so that your future husband can focus on the masculine world of war and politics. By the time you are 8 years old, your life has a rhythm and a rigour that would exhaust a modern adult. Your days are a seamless tapestry of prayer, Latin declensions, French conversation, needlework, lute practice, dance steps, and lessons in logistics. You are rarely, if ever, allowed to simply be a child. The carefree play you might glimpse from a high window, watching the children of stable hands chasing chickens in the bailey, is a world away from your own. You're being polished like a gem. Every facet of your being shaped and cut for a single purpose, to shine brilliantly in a foreign court, to secure an alliance, and to one day run a palace with quiet, unassailable competence. The girl is disappearing, and the princess is taking form. The world you inhabit is not only one of structured time, but also of structured space, and your own body is the first territory to be colonized by duty and expectation. Just as your mind is being filled with specific, approved knowledge, your physical form is being molded and presented in a way that speaks of power, piety, and untouchable status. Your wardrobe is not a matter of personal taste. It is your uniform, your billboard, or your cage. The process begins every morning as the grey light struggles through the narrow, leaded glass window of your chamber. You're not allowed to simply hop out of bed and pull on a comfortable robe. You're awakened by your ladies-in-waiting, who enter your room with the quiet efficiency of a pit crew. Getting dressed is a ritual, a team effort, and it can take a very long time. It begins with the innermost layer, the only one that feels remotely comfortable. This is your chemise, or smock, a simple, long shift made of fine linen. This is the only garment you own that is washed with any regularity, forming a crucial barrier between your skin and the impossibly expensive, rarely cleaned fabrics that will be piled on top of it. Next come your stockings, made of wool or perhaps fine cloth, which are pulled up to your knees or thighs and held in place by garters. There is no elastic. Of course, everything is tied, pinned, or laced into place. Then, the true architecture of the outfit begins over the chemise. Your ladies lace you into a kirtle. This is a long, fitted underdress, snug around the torso and flaring out at the hips. It is your first experience of being truly confined by your clothes. It is laced tightly, sometimes stiffened with buckram, designed to give you the fashionable silhouette of the period. A high waist, a flattened chest, and a gracefully straight posture. It is a constant, unyielding hug that reminds you to stand tall and to move with deliberate grace and to never, ever slump. Breathing deeply is a luxury you learn to live without. Only now, over this foundation, does the main gown go on. This is the garment that announces you to the world. It might be a houppelande, a magnificent and voluminous gown of heavy velvet or silk brocade. The fabric itself is a statement. Silk travelled thousands of miles along dangerous trade routes from the east. Velvet was perfected by artisans in Italy. The dyes used to create the brilliant colours, a deep crimson from crushed insects, a rich blue from the woad plant, were fantastically expensive. In fact, a mainstream feature of medieval society was the existence of sumptuary laws. These were strict legal codes that dictated who could wear what. A wealthy merchant's wife, for instance, might be forbidden by law from wearing certain types of fur or the colour purple, which was reserved for royalty. Your closet is therefore not just a collection of clothes. It is a legally protected symbol of your elite status. You are literally wearing your family's power, The design of the gown is often as impractical as it is beautiful. The sleeves might be extravagantly long and flowing, dangling almost to the floor, lined with ermine or squirrel fur. They look elegant as you glide through a hall, but they are also a significant fire hazard around the castle's many open flames, and a nightmare to keep out of your soup at dinner. The skirt is long and heavy, often with a train that pools on the floor behind you. Every step you take is a negotiation with yards of fabric. Running's impossible. Even walking requires a specific gliding gait to keep from tripping. Your clothing is a physical manifestation of the leisurely, constrained life you're expected to lead. You do not perform labour. You are, in effect, a walking work of art. Your adornments are just as significant. Around your high waist you wear a girdle, which is not for holding your dress up, but is a purely decorative belt of linked gold or silver plates, often studded with gems. From it might hang a rosary, a decorative dagger you would never use, or a pomander. A pomander was a small, perforated metal ball containing a fragrant mixture of ambergris, musk, cloves, and other spices. In a world of questionable hygiene and pungent smells, you carry your own personal cloud of pleasant air with you, another clear sign of your separation from the common, smelly world. And what about your feet, which must carry this magnificent construction? On your feet you wear delicate slippers of soft leather, silk, or velvet, often intricately embroidered. They are beautiful but completely unsuited for the cold, uneven and often filthy castle floors, which might be covered in rushes strewn with discarded food and other waste. This is where a quirky and essential accessory comes in: pattens. These were wooden-soled overshoes that strapped onto your slippers, elevating you an inch or more above the ground. Walking in them was an acquired skill, a sort of elegant clomping, but they were essential for keeping your priceless footwear and the hem of your gown out of the muck. It's hard to look ethereal and majestic while teetering on wooden platforms, but such were the compromises of medieval high fashion. Finally, there is your head after a certain age. Your hair, a symbol of your maidenhood, is rarely worn loose. It is painstakingly braided, coiled, and pinned into elaborate arrangements, often augmented with ribbons or jewels. Over this, you wear a headdress. This could be a simple circlet of gold, a fine veil of silk gauze, or, in the later Middle Ages, the famously dramatic hennin. This was the tall, conical, pointed hat, sometimes a foot or more in height, from which a long, gossamer veil would float. It is the iconic headwear of the fairy tale princess, but historians still argue whether these extreme fashions for women were a deliberate tool of patriarchal control, making it physically difficult for women to move quickly or freely, or if noble women themselves embraced these styles as a competitive form of self-expression, a way to visually dominate a crowded court and assert their own status. Navigating a low stone doorway while wearing a giant pointy hat was likely a daily exercise in humility. Once the final pin is in place and the last jewel is adjusted, you are complete. You stand before a polished metal mirror, your reflection blurry and distorted. You do not see a child, you see a symbol, a glittering, constricted, fragrant, and impossibly valuable creature. Your clothes weigh you down, they keep you warm in the drafty halls and make you swelter near a fire. They dictate your posture, your pace, and your place. You are now ready to be seen. You glide out of your chamber, your ladies fussing with your train, ready to begin another day of being a perfect, silent advertisement for the wealth and power of your father's kingdom. Now dressed in the full, heavy panoply of your station, you glide out from your private chambers. Do you remember the sheer weight of your gown? The way it forces you to move with a slow, deliberate grace? That same measured pace carries you towards the very heart of the castle's political and social life, the Great Hall. This is where the main meals of the day are taken, and just like getting dressed, eating is a public performance governed by unyielding rules of etiquette. The hall is a cavernous, echoing space. The ceiling is a complex web of dark wooden beams, blackened by the smoke of countless fires that have burned in the huge central hearth. The air is a thick soup of smells: roasting meat, wood smoke, unwashed dogs that doze and fight for scraps under the tables, and the faint, collective odour of hundreds of people in an era before daily bathing. Light struggles through high, narrow windows, so the hall is often dim, lit by the fire and dozens of flickering tallow candles that do little to pierce the gloom. As a princess, you do not sit among the general population of knights, squires, and court officials who crowd the long trestle tables in the main body of the hall. You take your place at the high table, which is set on a raised platform, or dais, at one end of the room. This elevated position is entirely by design. You are literally and figuratively above everyone else, on constant display. Before the meal begins, a procession of pages moves along the high table with ewers of warm, rose-scented water and linen towels for you to wash your hands, a necessary piece of hygiene in a time when fingers were the primary eating utensils. Then, a long solemn grace is said by the chaplain, and only then does the controlled chaos of the meal commence. You look at the table before you. It is set with a fine linen cloth, but it might seem bare to modern eyes. You have a spoon crafted from silver, and a personal knife, which is sharp and pointed, good for both spearing food and, if necessary, defending your honour. What you do not have is a fork. They were seen as a foppish Italian affectation for much of the period and would not become common for centuries. You also do not have your own plates. Instead, the mainstream and defining feature of the medieval table is the trencher. This is a thick, square slab of stale bread, about 4 days old, so it's hard enough to be absorbent without falling apart. Food from the communal platters is placed directly onto your trencher. The bread soaks up the juices and gravies, and at the end of the meal, your gravy-soaked plate is collected and given as alms to the poor and hungry who wait at the castle gates. It is a system of charity built directly into the dinner service. You also don't have your own cup. You share a communal goblet, often made of silver or even gold, with the person sitting next to you. This makes elegant sipping an essential skill. You must wipe your mouth carefully on your napkin before you drink, so as not to leave a greasy film on the rim for your neighbour. It's a lovely way to bond, unless your neighbour is your younger brother, who has the table manners of a wild boar. The food itself arrives in a grand procession, carried in by an army of servants. The medieval noble diet is heavy on meat. Enormous platters are set down, bearing whole roasted animals. You might see a haunch of venison, a roasted boar with an apple in its mouth, or, on the grandest occasions, a swan or a peacock, painstakingly roasted and then redressed in its own feathers to look as if it were still alive on the platter. It is a stunning, if slightly macabre, display of wealth and the king's hunting prowess. The flavours, however, might be shocking to your palate. Spices were the ultimate luxury good, imported at astronomical cost from the Far East. A lord would spend a fortune on peppercorns, cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg, and ginger. Cooks used them with a heavy hand, not necessarily to create subtle and balanced flavours, but to flaunt the master's wealth. A dish loaded with spices was a dish that screamed, "I am richer than you are." Historians still argue whether the medieval elite's preference for this overwhelming spice profile was a genuinely enjoyed taste, perhaps developed to mask the flavour of meat that was beginning to turn, or if it was primarily a form of conspicuous consumption, where the message of the food was more important than the taste. Your meal is a strange mix of the bland and the overwhelmingly intense. The bread of your trencher is plain, but the sauce it soaks up is a riot of clashing sweet, sour, and spicy notes. Vegetables are surprisingly rare on the high table, often considered the food of peasants, though you might have onions or garlic in a sauce, or a pottage of boiled greens. Desserts are elaborate. Fruit tarts, custards, and fantastic jellies moulded into elaborate shapes. This world of feasting, however, is constantly interrupted by the demands of faith. The church calendar was filled with fast days every Friday, the season of Lent, and various other holy days. On these days, eating the flesh of land animals was a sin. This did not mean you ate meagerly, it just meant the royal kitchens had to get creative. The rivers and castle fish ponds provided carp, pike, and eels. The sea provided herring and cod, but the definition of fish was wonderfully flexible, leading to some quirky culinary workarounds. Because beavers spent much of their time in the water and had scaly tails, their tails were classified as fish and could be eaten during Lent. Even more bizarrely, it was believed that barnacle geese, a coastal bird, did not hatch from eggs but spontaneously generated from barnacles growing on driftwood. Therefore, they were not esh in the traditional sense, and were also fair game on fast days. So, while your nightly neighbours might grumble, you could still sit down to a nice, juicy, fishy goose for your Lenten dinner. A truly great banquet was more than a meal. It was a form of political theatre. Between the numerous courses, there would be entertainment. A jester might tell crude jokes, acrobats might tumble across the floor, and minstrels in the gallery would play lutes and sing ballads. The most spectacular element was the subtlety, or entremets. These were incredible, edible sculptures brought out to dazzle the guests. A cook might fashion a castle out of pastry and marzipan, with tiny flags bearing your family's coat of arms, or a scene from mythology rendered entirely in spun sugar. These weren't really for eating, they were for awe. They were a declaration of the kingdom's power, artistry, and wealth. A message to any visiting noble or ambassador that this was a court to be feared and respected. As the meal winds down, you have picked delicately at the small portions deemed suitable for a lady. The performance is almost over. The leftover food is cleared, the trenchers collected, and the pages return with their ewers of scented water for a final hand-washing. You've navigated the complex social maze of the royal table. Another public test passed. You're a silent, beautiful participant in the theatre of your father's court, a living testament to his bounty and power, even if the taste of cloves and ginger still burns on your tongue. You retreat from the echoing clamour of the great hall, the heavy scent of roasted meat and wood smoke still clinging to your velvet gown. The performance of the meal is over, but the reality of living within these thick stone walls is a constant sensory experience, while your clothing and food project an image of exquisite, untouchable perfection. The day-to-day business of keeping clean and healthy is a far more earthy and precarious affair. Your life is a strange paradox. Moments of extreme luxury set against a backdrop of what we would consider profound discomfort and danger. Let's first dispel a common myth: you do not live in filth. The idea that medieval people, especially nobles, never bathed is largely a fiction. You do bathe, and when you do, it is a luxurious and elaborate ritual. However, it is a ritual, not a quick daily habit. Taking a bath requires a military-style operation. Servants will haul a large, high-sided wooden tub into your bedchamber, placing it near the fireplace. To protect your noble skin from splinters, the tub is lined with a clean linen sheet. Then begins the arduous process of heating water in cauldrons over the fire and carrying it, bucket by steaming bucket, to fill the tub. It's an enormous expenditure of labour and firewood, which is why it might only happen once a week or so, or in preparation for a special event. Once the bath is ready, it is a private delight. Your ladies-in-waiting will perfume the water with fragrant herbs like lavender, chamomile, or rose petals. You have access to a soft soap made from animal fat and lye, scented with essential oils. You can soak in the warm water, a rare and cherished moment of peace and comfort, shielded from the castle's perpetual chill by a canopy erected around the tub to trap the steam and heat. It's a medieval spa day, and for a little while you can wash away the weight of your heavy clothes and the pressures of the court, but the very scale of the production tells its own story. The fact that getting clean requires the coordinated effort of half a dozen servants shows just how precious and rare simple warmth and cleanliness truly are. This temporary comfort is a stark contrast to the permanent state of your environment. The castle is a living, breathing organism, and it is not always a healthy one. There is a pervasive dampness that clings to the stone, a chill that no fireplace can ever truly banish. You learn to live with constant drafts that snake under tapestries and through ill-fitting window shutters. The rushes on the floor, meant to provide insulation and be swept out periodically, often become a matted collection of spilled food, animal waste, and other debris, creating a distinct, musty odour. And then there is the matter of sanitation. Your privy or guardrobe is a feat of medieval engineering, but not one built for comfort. It is typically a small stone closet built into the thickness of the outer wall, with a hole in a stone or wooden seat that opens directly down a chute. The waste simply drops, sometimes into a cesspit at the base of the castle, and often directly into the moat. It is functional, but it is also cold, breathtakingly draughty, and a very public sort of private moment. In this environment, sickness is a constant, lurking shadow. A simple cut from a needle while doing your embroidery could fester into a life-threatening infection. A winter chill could settle in your chest and become a fatal case of pneumonia. For all your value as a political asset, you are as fragile as any peasant child, and your health is a matter of state concern. When you inevitably fall ill, with a fever, a racking cough, or a mysterious pain, the court physician is summoned. He is a man of great learning, but his knowledge is based on a medical framework that is profoundly alien to us. The central mainstream belief that governs all medicine is the theory of the four humours. This ancient Greek idea holds that the human body is composed of four essential fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. A healthy person has these four humours in perfect balance. Sickness, therefore, is simply an imbalance. Too much blood making you hot and feverish, sanguine. Too much phlegm making you sluggish and cold, phlegmatic. The physician's job is not to kill a virus or bacterium, concepts that do not exist, but to restore your personal humoral equilibrium. To do this, he must first diagnose the problem. His primary tool is a detailed inspection of your urine. This is a quirky, but essential, part of any diagnosis. A servant will bring him a sample in a special flask, and he will hold it to the light, studying its colour, consistency and sediment. He will note its smell. He might even, if he is particularly dedicated, taste it. He compares his findings to a detailed urine wheel, a circular chart that links different urinary characteristics to specific ailments and humoral imbalances. A diagnosis of too much blood, for instance, might be his conclusion from this inspection. Once the imbalance is identified, the cures are prescribed, and they are all designed to remove the excess humour. If you have too much blood, the solution is obvious. You must be bled. This could be done by a surgeon making a small cut in a vein, or, more commonly, by applying leeches to your skin. You lie quietly while the slimy creatures latch on and drink their fill. A strange and unsettling sensation. If the problem is an excess of bile, the physician might prescribe powerful herbal concoctions to make you vomit or laxatives to purge your system. Your diet will be strictly controlled. Certain foods were considered hot or cold, or wet or dry, and you'll be fed things believed to counteract your specific imbalance, while the university-trained physician is applying his learned and often violent remedies. Your ladies-in-waiting are likely employing a whole other set of cures based on folklore, herbalism and prayer. They will brew you teas from healing plants grown in the castle's herb garden. They may place a holy relic under your pillow, or say special prayers to a saint known for healing. This creates a fascinating medical duality, and historians still argue whether the aggressive, theory-based treatments of the physicians, like bloodletting, were ultimately more harmful or helpful than the gentler, experience-based folk remedies of the women who attended the sickbeds. Were you more likely to be saved by a leech or a prayer? No one really knew. You simply endure it all. The doctor's strange pronouncements, the bitter herbs, the unnerving bloodletting wrapped in furs, your fate in the hands of a science that seems more like magic, and a faith that is as powerful as any medicines. When the physician and his leeches have departed, and your strength returns, your carefully structured life resumes. But it is not an endless cycle of lessons, meals, and prayers. There are moments of respite, hours set aside for what could be called leisure. Yet, even your free time is not truly free. Your pastimes are designed to be elegant, skillful, and appropriate to your station. They are another facet of your education, another arena in which to display the grace and refinement that have been so meticulously drilled into you. But within these gilded confines, you find moments of genuine pleasure, of quiet contemplation, and even thrilling action. On the long, cold afternoons of winter, when the wind howls around the stone turrets, you find your entertainment indoors. The solar, the private sitting room of the Queen and her ladies, is the main stage for these activities. It is warmer and more comfortable than the Great Hall, with a large fireplace, cushioned window seats, and walls covered in rich tapestries that tell stories of ancient heroes. Here, you sit across a beautifully carved ivory or wooden board for a game of chess. The game, which came to Europe from Persia, is wildly popular among the nobility. It is not seen as a mere distraction, but as a serious intellectual pursuit, a miniature battle that hones your skills in strategy, foresight, and patience as you ponder your next move, moving the heavy, stylized pieces of the queen or the knight. You are learning the same kind of strategic thinking that your father uses to govern his kingdom. Honestly, some days the rules of court politics are so baffling that a straightforward game of chess feels like a relaxing break. If chess is too demanding, there is always tables, an ancestor of modern backgammon, a faster game of luck and quick decisions played with dice. But the most common form of entertainment is simply listening. On many evenings, a minstrel or troubadour is brought in to perform. In the flickering firelight, he will pluck a lute and sing long, epic poems of chivalry and daring, tales of King Arthur's knights, of Charlemagne, or of star-crossed lovers like Tristan and Isolde. You and the other ladies of the court sit, perhaps with your embroidery in your laps, utterly captivated. These stories are your soap operas, your fantasy novels, your cinematic universe. They shape your understanding of the world, of honour, and of love. And this is where a great scholarly debate lies. Historians still argue whether these tales of courtly love, where knights performed impossible deeds for the favour of a seemingly all-powerful lady, offered medieval women an empowering imaginative outlet and a vocabulary for emotional desire, or if they simply reinforced the existing power structures by idealizing female beauty and passivity, making women the beautiful, unattainable prize in a game played by men. As you listen, your hands are likely busy. Do you remember the hours of needlepoint from your lessons? Here, it transforms from a chore into a communal, social activity. The women of the court gather, their needles flashing, working on their own small projects or contributing to a massive tapestry together. Their hands are occupied, but their minds and mouths are free. This is where the real business of the court happens. News is exchanged, alliances are subtly formed, reputations are made or broken in a flurry of whispers. It is the heart of the female social world. Curled at your feet or on your lap as you work might be a tiny dog, a little spaniel or terrier. This is a quirky feature of noble life. These were not just pets, but comforter dogs. These pampered creatures, often draped in their own little velvet coats, were believed to serve a dual purpose. They provided warmth and companionship, of course, but it was also thought they could soothe stomach pains when held against the abdomen and, more pragmatically, that they would attract the fleas that inevitably infested even the cleanest of castles, drawing the pests away from their noble owner. You have, in essence, a living, breathing, and very fashionable flea trap. When the weather is fair, however, the whole court yearns to be outdoors. The oppressive, the smoky air of the castle is left behind for the thrill of the hunt, while the violent, dangerous pursuit of wild boar or stag on powerful war horses is the domain of the king and his knights. You have your own prestigious and beloved outdoor sport. Falconry. This is a mainstream aristocratic pastime, and one of the few where women could participate on almost equal footing with men. Your father presents you with your own hawk, perhaps a graceful merlin or a swift peregrine falcon. Your rank in society can actually be read by the bird you carry on your gloved fist. An emperor might carry an eagle, only a knight a falcon, and a lowly knave only a kestrel. You spend hours with the master falconer, learning how to handle the bird, to release it, to call it back, out in the fields, riding a gentle, ambling horse called a palfrey. You experience a rare sense of power and freedom. You unhood your hawk, its dark eyes sharp and focused, and cast it into the air. You watch it circle, a tiny speck against the vast blue sky, before it stoops, diving with breathtaking speed to strike its prey. The thrill of that moment, of that connection with a wild, beautiful creature, is a potent antidote to the stuffy confines of castle life. On other days, you might join a hunt, but in a more sedate fashion. You and the other ladies will ride out, following the men, enjoying the fresh air and the excitement of the chase from a safe distance, a colourful and elegant audience to the masculine display of prowess. But there is another, more peaceful outdoor escape available to you. Within the castle's curtain walls, there is often an enclosed garden, a private sanctuary known as a herber. It is a small, carefully ordered paradise, protected from the wild world outside. Here you can walk along paths of crushed shells or soft turf, surrounded by raised beds of fragrant roses, lilies, and herbs like rosemary and thyme. There might be a small fountain trickling in the centre, its sound a gentle counterpoint to the distant noise of the blacksmith's hammer. This is your space for quiet reflection, for private conversation with your most trusted ladies, a place where you can take off your metaphorical armour and simply breathe. It is a world away from the noise, the spells, and the politics of the great hall, a fragile, beautiful piece of nature held safely within the stone embrace of the fortress. These moments, whether they are filled with the wild cry of a hawk or the silent perfume of a rose, are the punctuation in the long, formal prose of your life, brief but essential, the fleeting moments of freedom you enjoyed, chasing a hawk's shadow across an open field or finding peace in the quiet geometry of the garden, become more precious as you begin to notice a subtle shift in the currents of the court. The way the king's advisors look at you is different now, more calculating. There are more closed-door meetings in your father's solar, from which you hear the low murmur of serious debate. Strangers with foreign accents and unfamiliar coats of arms begin to arrive at the castle, their retinues crowding the courtyards. You are entering your 12th or 13th year, your childhood. That brief, highly structured period of preparation is officially over. The chess game you learnt to play in the solar is about to become terrifyingly real, and you're no longer a player, but the most valuable piece on the board. The queen, to be moved across the map of Europe to checkmate a rival or secure a border. One day, you're summoned to your father's presence. This is not a casual meeting. You are dressed in your finest kirtle, your hair meticulously braided. You enter the chamber and find him not alone, but with his most senior counsellors, their faces grim and unreadable. There is no gentle preamble. The king, your father, informs you as a matter of state policy that negotiations for your hand in marriage are entering their final stages. He names a prince, or perhaps a duke, or even a widowed king. From a kingdom you know only from your language tutors and the maps drawn on stiff parchment, he may show you a quick, unflattering sketch of the man, or perhaps just a description of his titles and lands. Your opinion is not requested. Your consent is assumed. You are being given an order, the most significant one of your life. All your lessons, the Latin, the French, and the dancing, the music, the endless embroidery, it all crystallizes into this single terrifying purpose. You were never being educated, you were being prepared for export. You are now the subject of a complex and ruthless business transaction. In those council meetings you are forbidden to attend, you are discussed as a collection of assets. First, there is your bloodline, the royal lineage that flows through your veins, a priceless commodity. Second, there is your dowry, the wealth your father will send with you to your new husband. This is the subject of intense haggling. So many thousands in gold coin, ownership of a particular province, trading rights in a certain port. Third, and most important, is the alliance your bodies will seal. Your marriage is a treaty made flesh. It might end a decades-long war, create a powerful bloc against a mutual enemy, or secure a shaky succession. Your personal happiness is not a factor in this geopolitical equation. As the deal nears completion, a special embassy may arrive from your future husband's court. Their purpose is singular: to inspect the goods. You are brought before them in the Great Hall, a moment of profound and humiliating scrutiny. Dressed in clothes that signify your father's immense wealth, you must walk the length of the hall, turn and sit, all under the watchful, assessing eyes of these foreign men. Or they note your height, your complexion, the colour of your hair and eyes. They watch for any sign of a limp, a cough, or a deformity. They engage you in conversation in their own language to test the fluency your tutors have drilled into you. They are gauging your fitness for the most important part of your job, bearing healthy heirs. A court painter might accompany them, his job being to create your official portrait. He will spend days sketching you, trying to capture a pleasing likeness that will be sent back to your intended. It's the medieval equivalent of a dating profile. Only this one will seal a treaty, and you pray he's a kind and flattering artist. When the terms are finally agreed upon, the dowry settled, and the inspection passed, the wedding itself often takes place before you've even met your groom. This is accomplished through a mainstream and legally binding practice known as a marriage by proxy. You proceed to the royal chapel, dressed as a bride, and stand before the altar. But the man standing beside you is not your husband. He is a high-ranking nobleman, often a cousin or trusted advisor to your groom, who has been given the legal authority to speak the vows on his behalf. You pledge your life and loyalty to this stand-in, this representative of a man you know only by name. The ceremony is legally complete. You are now a wife. To make the union unassailably legal in the eyes of the church, which required some form of consummation, an even more bizarre ritual sometimes followed. This quirky tidbit of proxy marriage was the ceremonial bedding. Later that evening, you would be led to a state bed by your ladies. You would lie down, fully clothed in your formal gown. The proxy, also fully clothed, would then lie down on the bed beside you in front of numerous high-ranking witnesses from both courts. He might touch your hand or shoulder as a symbol of taking possession. To ensure that no actual impropriety occurred, a naked sword, or sometimes a large bolster, would be placed down the middle of the bed between you, a stark symbol that this was a legal act, not an intimate one. It is a profoundly strange, impersonal, and deeply awkward piece of political theatre. Imagine being tucked in next to your future husband's 50-year-old uncle. And so, you're a married virgin, a child bride, bound to a stranger. The reality of your situation begins to settle in your heart like a cold stone. You'll soon have to leave everything you have ever known. The castle that has been your entire world, the faces of your ladies-in-waiting, even the familiar feel of the wind on the battlements. This raises a question that historians still argue over. Were you, and other young women like you, completely powerless pawns in this game? Or did you find ways to exert some small measure of control? Could a princess, through tears and pleas to a doting father, or by cultivating a reputation for extreme piety, or even by feigning a sudden, mysterious illness, influence the outcome of these negotiations? The chronicles, written by men, rarely record such things, leaving us to wonder about the silent, desperate struggles that must have taken place behind the tapestry-hung walls. For now, though, your fate is sealed. You are a wife, and your new life, in a new land, with a new and unknown husband, awaits. The ink on the marriage treaty is barely dry, and the strange phantom ceremony of your proxy wedding is still a fresh, bewildering memory. Now, the castle transforms. The quiet rhythms of your life are replaced by a frantic, organized chaos, and all of it revolves around a single, looming event. Your departure. For weeks. The courtyards are filled with the clang of blacksmiths shoeing horses, and the shouts of carpenters reinforcing the axles of heavy wagons. Your chambers, once a quiet sanctuary, are overrun with servants packing your entire existence into enormous, iron-banded wooden chests. This is your trousseau, and it is a treasure trove designed to awe your new family and announce the staggering wealth of your own. There are dozens of gowns of silk and velvet, packed in lavender and herbs. There are furs, linens, and tapestries to decorate your future rooms and make them feel more like home. There are jewels, your personal prayer book, silver cutlery, and golden plates. It's less like packing for a trip and more like a carefully planned invasion of luxury goods. The day you are to leave dawns cold and grey. The entire household gathers in the main courtyard to see you off. This is the moment the abstract idea of your marriage becomes a stark and painful reality. You say your goodbyes. Your father, the king, might place a stiff, formal hand on your shoulder, his face a mask of regal composure, though you might see a flicker of something else in his eyes. Your mother, the queen, embraces you, her advice a whispered litany of duties. Be pious, be obedient, be fruitful. Your ladies in waiting, the companions of your youth, are weeping openly. You are taking some of them with you, but others you will never see again. The final, sharpest pang of sorrow comes as you leave the gates of the castle, the only home you've ever known, its familiar grey stone receding behind you until it is just a speck on the horizon. You are now truly untethered, a ship pushed out into a vast, unknown sea. You travel at the heart of a magnificent and slow-moving beast, your retinue. This is not a simple trip, it is a procession, a moving statement of power. There are hundreds of people in your party. Knights in shining mail ride at the front and back, their banners snapping in the wind, a deterrent to any bandits foolish enough to attack such a formidable group. There are the diplomats and the officials who negotiated your marriage, their job now to deliver you safely. There is your household staff, your ladies, your chaplain, your physician, your treasurer, and countless grooms, laundresses, and cooks. And then there are the wagons, a long train of heavy, groaning vehicles piled high with the chests of your trousseau. Your own comfort is a priority, at least in theory. You might spend some of the day riding your favourite palfrey, a gentle horse with a smooth gait, but for long stretches, especially in bad weather, you will travel in a litter. This mainstream mode of transport for noble women is essentially a covered couch, enclosed by curtains, slung between two sturdy horses, one at the front and one at the back. It offers you privacy and protection from the rain and sun, but the swaying, rocking motion on the rough, rutted roads is enough to make even the strongest stomach turn. It's a dizzying, claustrophobic way to see the world pass by in blurry green and brown snatches. The journey is achingly slow, the roads are often little more than muddy tracks, and your massive procession can travel only 15 or 20 miles on a good day. At night, you do not camp under the stars. Your arrival is planned and expected. You stay in the castles of allied lords, or in large, wealthy monasteries, which were the medieval equivalent of luxury hotels offering safety, food, and lodging. But each night is another strange bed, another unfamiliar hall, another set of faces staring at you. The foreign princess, with a mixture of awe and suspicion, and to cross the lands of lords who are not your father's firm allies. Your party carries a quirky but vital set of documents. Safe conduct letters. These are official parchment, stamped with the seals of the local dukes, counts and barons, granting your procession the right to pass through their territory unmolested. It is your medieval passport, a piece of paper that stands between you and potential extortion or attack. If your journey requires you to cross the sea, you face a new kind of misery. You board a cramped, creaking wooden ship, a cog, its single mast and square sail looking perilously fragile against the vastness of the water. You are given the best cabin, but it is still just a small, airless wooden box. The ship is tossed by the waves, and you're overcome with seasickness. The fear of storms is constant, as is the very real threat of pirates. You spend the voyage praying for the sight of land, for solid ground beneath your feet again. Yet, for all the discomfort, fear and loneliness, this journey is also the first time you are seeing the world from the swaying confines of your litter or the back of your horse. You glimpse things you have only ever read about. You see mountains that loom impossibly high, their peaks lost in the clouds. You see cities crowded with more people than you ever imagined, a riot of noise and smells and life. You pass through villages where the people speak with strange accents and eat foods you've never tasted. It is a terrifying and profoundly isolating experience, but it is also a slow, dawning revelation. The world is so much larger, so much more varied and complex than the enclosed, predictable life of the castle you left behind. After weeks, or perhaps even months, of this slow, relentless travel, a scout rides back to the procession with the news. You are approaching your destination. A nervous energy buzzes through your retinue. Your ladies fuss over your hair and gown, ensuring you look perfect upon arrival. Your familiar companions, the people from your home court, are your last link to your old life. And this raises a question that historians consider. Was this large retinue that accompanied you primarily a source of comfort and support in a strange land, a familiar bubble to ease your transition? Or was it also a political tool, a collection of loyal agents meant to ensure your father's interests were represented and his influence felt in your new court? The truth, as always, is likely a mix of both. As you crest a final hill, you see it below you, the city, the fortress, the castle that is to be your new home. Its skyline is alien, its banners are not your own. The long, weary journey is over. But as you look down at the imposing stone walls, you know with a cold certainty that the most difficult and dangerous part of your journey has just begun. Your procession descends from the hills, a slow-moving river of silk, steel and horseflesh, flowing towards the city walls. As you draw near, another party rides out to meet you, their banners bright and unfamiliar. At their head is him, your husband. You see him for the first time not in a quiet room, but in the open air, surrounded by hundreds of courtiers and knights, the wind whipping at his cloak. He might be a boy barely older than you, his expression as nervous as your own. He might be a man in the prime of his life, his face weathered and stern, or he could be an old king, his beard grey, his eyes holding the weight of decades of rule. There is no time for a personal connection. You are both actors on a grand stage. Diplomats make flowery speeches. You are helped down from your horse or litter, and you perform the deep, perfect curtsy you have practiced 1,000 times. He takes your hand, his touch cool and formal, and perhaps murmurs a polite, rehearsed greeting. This is the man whose bed you will share, whose children you must bear, whose life is now legally bound to your own, and your first meeting is a public spectacle. With the formal greetings concluded, the two processions merge into one, and you ride towards the city gates. Your entry is a triumph, a carefully orchestrated piece of propaganda. The streets are packed with people, a sea of upturned, curious faces. They've been given a day off from their work, and perhaps a ration of free wine to celebrate your arrival. Banners with your new, combined coat of arms hang from every window. Church bells peal, their joyous clangour echoing off the stone buildings. Musicians play, and young girls strew herbs and flowers in your path. You ride beside your new husband, a perfect, smiling doll. You are the living symbol of a new peace, a new alliance, the promise of a prosperous future. The weight of all those hopes, all those eyes, is a physical pressure, but you must not let it show. You must look serene, happy, and confident, a paragon of royal grace. The next day is the wedding itself. Even though you are legally married by proxy, this second ceremony is essential. This is the public affirmation, the religious sanctification of the union in front of your new people. You're dressed in the most magnificent gown from your trousseau, a garment so heavy with gold thread and seed pearls that you can barely move. You walk or ride in procession to the city's great cathedral, but the ceremony does not happen in the sacred dimness of the interior. In a mainstream practice of the time, the wedding vows are exchanged in facti ecclesiae. In the face of the church, you and your husband stand on the steps, outside the main doors, in the full light of day, with the bishop before you and the entire court, along with half the city, crowded into the square to watch. Here, in front of everyone, you repeat your vows. He places a ring on your finger. The union is declared not in a private whisper, but in a public shout. It is a contract witnessed by God and all of his people. Only after this public commitment do you enter the church as man and wife for the nuptial mass. After the long mass, it is time for the wedding feast. If you thought the banquets at your father's court were grand, they were but a quiet supper compared to this. The great hall of your new home is filled to bursting. The display of food is almost overwhelming. Course after course of roasted meats, exotic birds, enormous fish, and intricate jellies. The subtleties, those sugar sculptures you remember, are on a scale you've never seen. A perfect replica of the castle, a depiction of a famous battle, a fire-breathing dragon, wine flows freely, A quirky and festive tradition you might encounter is the bride ale. A special, strong ale has been brewed just for the occasion, and it is sold to the wedding guests. The money collected goes directly to you, a kind of communal gift to help establish your new household. It's a boisterous, joyous, and incredibly loud affair that lasts for hours. Another performance where you must sit smiling at the high table, the centre of everyone's attention. As the evening wears on and the guests become more raucous, the final and most crucial ritual of the day approaches. The public bedding ceremony, the feast winds down, and a solemn, almost religious procession begins, led by musicians and torchbearers. You and your husband are escorted from the great hall to the state bedchamber. The room is not empty and waiting for you. It is filled with the highest-ranking members of the court, dukes, duchesses, bishops, and advisors. There is no privacy here. Your new ladies-in-waiting, along with the women of your husband's family, lead you to the bed and perform the ritual of undressing you, removing your heavy gown and jewels, and clothing you in a fine linen nightdress. On the other side of the room, the king's lords do the same for him. Once you are both in the bed, a bishop steps forward to bless the union, sprinkling the sheets with holy water and praying for fertility and many sons. This is a moment that sparks a great deal of scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether this public ritual was seen by a young bride as a moment of profound personal humiliation, or if the culture of the time was so different that it was simply accepted as a normal and necessary act of state, a political function entirely separate from personal feeling. Finally, the moment arrives. The bishop and the nobles offer their final congratulations. The heavy velvet curtains are drawn around the bed. You are, at last, alone with your husband, a man you met only yesterday. The noise of the court fades to a murmur outside the curtains. The public spectacle is over. The religious rites are complete. The political alliance has been sealed, blessed, and is now, in this final moment, to be irrevocably consummated in the sudden, heavy silence of the curtained bed. The overwhelming reality of your new life begins. You wake to the feeling of heavy silence. The velvet curtains around the bed are still drawn, creating a small, dark world for just the two of you. But you know that beyond the fabric, the entire court is waiting. This is the morning after your wedding, and the final act of the spectacle is about to play out. The curtains are pulled back, not by a gentle hand, but with a formal rustling authority. The highest-ranking ladies of the court, led by your new mother-in-law, enter the chamber. Their faces are polite masks, but their eyes are sharp. They are here for the proof. The blood-stained sheets from the consummation of the marriage. This is not about your privacy. It is about the security of the kingdom. The consummation makes the marriage indissoluble. It turns a political treaty into a physical reality. When the evidence is seen and discreetly acknowledged, a collective, unspoken sigh of relief passes through the room. The alliance is secure. The princess is now truly the queen consort. The morning after etiquette is, in its own way, more nerve-wracking than the wedding itself. Now, your new life begins in earnest. You are the mistress of a royal household, but you feel more like a guest, or perhaps a prisoner. Your familiar ladies-in-waiting, the ones who travelled with you, form a small, comforting island of your native tongue and customs in a vast sea of foreignness. But you quickly realize they, and you, are being watched. Your new household is staffed with strangers appointed by the king or his mother. Your new chief lady-in-waiting is a powerful duchess from a local family. Is she your guide and confidant, or is she a spy, reporting your every word and mood back to a rival faction at court? You have no way of knowing. The language you spent years learning from a patient tutor is now your only tool for survival, and you find it is a clumsy and inadequate one. You can manage the formal greetings, the polite dinner conversation, but you cannot keep up with the rapid-fire whispers, the inside jokes, the local dialects that pepper the speech of the courtiers. You find yourself smiling and nodding through long conversations, catching perhaps one word in 5, trying to gauge the meaning from gestures and expressions. It's a profoundly isolating experience, like watching a play in a language you barely understand, except you are on the stage and your performance is being judged by everyone. Trying to understand the local gossip feels like trying to solve a riddle in another language while 100 people stare at you. You soon learn that this court, like all courts, is a tangled nest of ambitions, rivalries, and ancient grudges. Every bow has a dozen different meanings depending on its depth. Every compliment has a hidden barb. The most powerful and dangerous piece on this treacherous chessboard is often the woman who just inspected your wedding sheets, the dowager queen, your husband's mother. This is a mainstream feature of court politics. She has been the first lady of this kingdom for decades. She holds vast lands, immense wealth, and a network of loyal followers who owe their positions to her. She will not surrender her power and influence to a foreign girl without a fight. She may be charming and motherly to your face, but you see the way others defer to her, the way her faction moves through the court like a silent army. She is your greatest potential ally and your most dangerous enemy. Beside her, there are other factions to consider. The king's ambitious younger brother, who may see you as a rival for influence. The powerful archbishop, who controls the spiritual life of the kingdom. The wealthy dukes from the north, who barely conceal their disdain for the central court. They all watch you, circling like wolves, trying to determine if you are a threat, a pawn, or a potential ally in their own endless games of power. Your every action is analysed. If you show favour to one, you make an enemy of another. If you remain neutral, you are seen as weak or aloof. To survive, you must learn to gather information. You must become a watcher, a listener, a student of human nature. You learn to read the subtle shifts of power in the way people position themselves around the king. You learn that the most valuable information often comes from the most unlikely of sources. While the king's spies are listening at keyholes, the court jester or dwarf sees everything in plain sight. This quirky figure, dressed in motley, is allowed to go anywhere, to speak to anyone, to make jokes that mock the powerful. Because he is dismissed as a fool, he is ignored, but he is often the most intelligent and observant person in the room. His nonsensical rhymes might contain a warning. His silly pranks might reveal a secret affair. Learning to decipher the jester's jokes can be a more effective form of espionage than bribing a guard. As the weeks turn into months, your isolation deepens. One by one, your beloved attendants from your home country are sent back, laden with gifts and thanks from your new husband. It is done with the utmost politeness. A gesture meant to show that you are now fully integrated into your new family. But you know the truth. You are being cut off from your roots, separated from those whose loyalty was unequivocally yours. You are left with only your new household, a collection of smiling strangers, and this forces upon you a constant, draining choice, a subject of great scholarly debate. Historians argue whether a foreign queen who clung to her native language, fashions, and advisors was dooming herself by feeding the court's xenophobia, or if she was wisely maintaining a power base and cultural identity separate from her husband's. Do you assimilate completely, becoming a perfect copy of the women around you? Or do you hold on to the things that make you you, and risk being forever branded as a suspicious outsider? You walk through the cold, magnificent halls of your new home, no longer the terrified bride, but not yet the confident queen. You are something in between. A survivor. You are learning the delicate, deadly dance of court intrigue. You're beginning to discern who among your new ladies is trustworthy, who is ambitious, and who is dangerous. You are building alliances. One quiet conversation, one shared prayer, one small favor at a time. The naive girl who arrived weeks ago is gone, burned away in the constant, unblinking fire of the court's gaze. In her place, a new person is being forged, wary, observant, and soon you are learning that to survive here, and one day to rule, your sharpest weapon will not be a dagger, but your mind. You have learned the silent language of the court. You can read a rival's intent in the flicker of an eye and discern a plot from a half-heard whisper. You have begun to build your own network, to find your footing on the slippery, polished floors of your new home. But just as you begin to feel a fragile sense of mastery over this political world, you become aware of a new and far more intense form of scrutiny. All the complex power dynamics of the court, the factions and the rivalries, now fade into the background. They are secondary to a single, all-consuming question that is being asked in the council chambers, in the kitchens, and in the villages. Is the new queen with child? Your cleverness, your piety, your grace, all these qualities are now irrelevant. Your entire value, your security, your very reason for being here, has been reduced to your biology. Your womb is now a matter of state. Your body is no longer your own. It belongs to the dynasty. The intimate rhythm of your monthly cycle becomes a subject of quiet, anxious speculation throughout the castle. Your ladies in waiting, the women who dress you and attend you, are now also your monitors. Their polite questions about your health are not just pleasantries, they're intelligence gathering. Every month that passes without an announcement, the pressure mounts. The smiles of your mother-in-law, the dowager queen, become a little tighter. Your husband, the king, may grow distant and irritable. You feel the unspoken accusation in every room you enter. According to the mainstream theological and medical understanding of the time, derived from Aristotle, it was believed that the male seed contained the entire blueprint for a human, and the woman was merely the fertile ground in which that seed grew. Therefore, any failure to conceive, or indeed the failure to produce a son, was seen as a failing of the soil. It is your fault. You are subjected to an endless array of remedies and rituals designed to correct this perceived inadequacy. The court physicians prescribe diets rich in foods thought to promote fertility, leeks, nuts, and certain types of meat. You are made to drink foul-tasting herbal potions. You are given amulets to wear, strange charms blessed by a priest. You may be sent on a pilgrimage to the shrine of a saint, known for answering the prayers of barren women, like Saint Anne, the mother of the Virgin Mary. You kneel for hours on the cold stone floor of a distant chapel, the weight of a kingdom's future pressing down on your shoulders as you pray for a child. For a son, it is a lonely and desperate time. Wear your own deep, personal desire for a child is entangled with the immense public and political demand for an heir. Then, 1 month. Everything changes, the waiting ends, the physicians are summoned, they ask their questions, they consult their charts, and a cautious, joyful verdict is reached. You are pregnant. A wave of palpable relief washes over the entire court. The king is jubilant, the bells are rung, a special mass of thanksgiving is held in the cathedral. For a moment, you are a hero, but the relief is quickly replaced by a new, 9-month-long period of anxiety. You are now the kingdom's most precious and fragile vessel. Your life becomes a carefully managed state of confinement. You are discouraged from riding horses. Your diet is even more strictly monitored. You are surrounded constantly by the ladies who watch your every step, terrified you might stumble or fall. You are being protected, but it feels like you are in a gilded prison, a walking, breathing incubator for the future of the dynasty. When your time comes, the process of giving birth is, like every other major event in your life, a public affair. You are not secluded with a midwife and your mother. You are moved to a special birthing chamber, which is soon filled with a crowd of high-ranking witnesses. Your mother-in-law is there, of course, along with your chief ladies-in-waiting and often key male members of the council and a bishop. They are not there to offer comfort. They are there to watch. Their presence guarantees that the child born is truly yours, that there can be no accusation of a baby being switched at birth, no hint of a succession crisis caused by a so-called changeling. It's a miracle they didn't sell tickets. As the long, agonizing hours of labor progress, your ladies will employ every tool at their disposal to help you. They will pray over you and wipe your brow. They might bring out a quirky and powerful object of faith, a birthing girdle. This was often a long scroll of parchment or a silk belt, intricately inscribed with prayers, magical symbols, and the names of saints, which was wrapped tightly around your abdomen. Some were even considered holy relics themselves, believed to have been worn by the Virgin Mary or another female saint. It was both a spiritual comfort and a desperate plea for divine intervention in this most dangerous of moments. And then the final push, the baby's first cry. The room falls silent, every eye turning to the midwife as she cleans the infant. This is the moment of judgment. She holds the baby up and makes the announcement that will define the rest of your life. If she says, "It is a princess," there will be polite smiles, congratulations on a safe delivery, and a healthy child. But beneath the pleasantries, you will feel the chill of collective disappointment. A girl is useful, another future marriage alliance, but she is not the heir. The pressure to try again will begin before you have even recovered. But if the midwife declares, "It is a prince," the room will erupt. The celebration will be genuine and ecstatic. You have done it. You have fulfilled your single greatest duty. You have given the kingdom its future king. In that moment, holding your newborn's son, your position at court is transformed. You are no longer just the foreign consort. You are the mother of the heir. This new status brings with it a new kind of power, leading to a debate that historians still ponder. Did this singular focus on a queen's reproductive role ultimately cancel out any other form of influence she might have, reducing her to a mere biological function? Or could a clever queen leverage her new, unassailable position as the mother of a future king to build her own power base, to influence her husband, and to shape the politics of the court in a way she never could before? As you look down at the tiny, wrinkled face of your child, You understand that he is not just your son. He is your shield, your security, your political masterpiece. You have done your duty. In the eyes of the court and the kingdom, the birth of a healthy son has fulfilled your primary purpose. A collective, decades-long anxiety about the succession has been eased, and the credit is all yours. And with this success, you feel a fundamental shift in your position. You are no longer the fragile foreign import, the vessel of a potential heir whose worth was yet to be proven. You are the mother of a king-to-be. Your roots have sunk deep into the soil of this new country, and they cannot be pulled up. The way people look at you has changed. The deference is deeper, the smiles more genuine. Even your formidable mother-in-law, the Dowager Queen, must now acknowledge that her own influence has been checked by your triumph. The future of the dynasty now lies with you and your son. This new, unassailable security becomes the foundation from which you can begin to build real power. Your influence starts in the one place no one else can go, the king's private chambers, in the great council hall. You are a silent, decorative presence. But in the quiet hours of the evening, when the courtiers have retired and the heavy doors are closed, you are his wife, his confidant, the mother of his child. This is the realm of what is often called bedchamber politics. Here, with the crowns and robes of state set aside, you can speak to the king not as a subject, but as a partner. You can offer your opinion on an ambitious duke, suggest a candidate for a vacant bishopric, or gently question a rash decision he is considering. This is not a formal power, but it is deeply potent. A carefully planted seed of an idea, whispered in a moment of intimacy, can grow into a royal decree weeks later. This kind of pillow talk is often the most effective and untraceable form of lobbying in the entire kingdom. Beyond these private moments, you wield a more tangible and public power through patronage. As queen, you are the head of your own vast household, an enterprise with its own lands, its own income, and hundreds of employees. You have the authority to appoint your own chaplains, treasurers, secretaries, and ladies-in-waiting. These are desirable, well-paid positions, and the competition for them is fierce. By bestowing these roles, you are not just hiring staff, you are building an army of loyal followers. A knight you appoint as the captain of your personal guard owes his fortune and career to you. A noble family whose daughter you select as a lady-in-waiting is now bound to you by gratitude. Maltoahi, your antechamber, becomes a bustling centre of influence, a place where aspiring courtiers come to petition for your favour. Your support can make a man's career, and your displeasure can stall it indefinitely. To manage this network, you have your own tools of administration. A quirky but powerful symbol of this is your personal signet ring. This is not merely a piece of jewellery, engraved with your unique coat of arms. It is your personal signature, your stamp of authority. When you press it into a pool of warm wax on a document, that document carries your full endorsement, a letter of recommendation to the king, a grant of a pension to a loyal servant, an order to the steward of your estates. All are validated by this small but personal seal. It is a quiet, constant assertion that your will has weight, that your office is a parallel centre of power to the king's own government. It is in its own way more powerful than a modern credit card, capable of dispensing fortunes and changing lives with a single impression. One of the most important public roles you can now embrace is that of the merciful intercessor. This is a mainstream and beloved aspect of queenship. While the king must be a figure of justice, often harsh and unforgiving, you are allowed to embody the Christian virtue of mercy. When a city has rebelled and the king is poised to punish it, its leaders may appeal to you. When a group of knights has been condemned to death for treason, their families will fall at your feet, begging for your help. In a highly theatrical but effective display, you can then go before your husband in his open court, kneel before him in front of all his barons, and publicly plead for him to show mercy. If he grants your request, and a wise king often does, as it costs him little and makes both of you more popular, the victory is yours. You become a hero to the people, a gentle, compassionate queen who softens the hard edge of royal power. This role wins you a level of love and popular support that no political manoeuvring ever could. This brings us to a question that historians still debate. Was the power you wielded as queen truly your own, a product of your intelligence and political skill, or was it entirely derivative, a borrowed light that shone only because the king, your husband, allowed it to? Could he revoke it at any moment, plunging you back into powerlessness? The answer is complex. While your position is certainly dependent on his, a skillful and popular queen, especially one who is the mother of the heir, can build a base of support so strong that she becomes a political force in her own right, one that the king cannot easily ignore. You're not just the king's wife, you're the chief diplomat to your home country, maintaining a constant correspondence that shapes foreign policy. You are the manager of your own dower lands, a feudal lord in your own right. You're a cultural trend-setter, a patron of the arts, and the undisputed leader of the court's social world. You sit in your solar, no longer the frightened girl who arrived in a foreign land. A pile of petitions lies on the table before you. A secretary waits patiently for your decision. You twist the signet ring on your finger, the cool weight of it a familiar comfort. You have learned that power here is not always about shouting commands or leading armies. It is about a quiet word at the right moment, a strategic gift, a well-placed supporter, and the slow, patient accumulation of loyalty and love. You have mastered the whispers of influence. You sit in the relative quiet of your solar, the heavy crown set aside for the afternoon, your son playing quietly with his nurse in the corner. You hold a letter in your hand, the parchment stiff, the script elegant and familiar. It is from your younger sister, but this letter did not arrive in a diplomat's pouch. It was carried by a travelling friar from the royal abbey of St. Hildegard, where your sister has just taken her final vows. As you read her words about prayer, peace, and the beauty of the illuminated manuscript she is working on, you cannot help but reflect on this other path, this life that could so easily have been your own. If the political winds had blown differently, if your husband's kingdom had sought an alliance elsewhere, or if you had been born the third royal daughter instead of the first, this life of bells and cloisters might have been your destiny. Not every princess is a pawn in the marriage game. For some, the path leads not to a foreign court, but to the house of God. The reasons are as varied as the women themselves. Perhaps a princess was born with a physical imperfection, a limp, a facial scar that was deemed to diminish her value on the royal marriage market. In an age of surplus daughters, younger girls for whom no suitable high-ranking husband could be found might be honourably retired to a convent to live out their days in piety. Sometimes the choice was a political one. A daughter whose existence could complicate the line of succession might be quietly placed in the church, her vows of chastity effectively removing her from the Game of Thrones. And for some, the call was genuine, a deep and profound piety that made the prospect of a life dedicated to Christ more appealing than one dedicated to a mortal king. This is a source of endless scholarly debate. Were convents a convenient and respectable prison, a dumping ground for inconvenient women, or did they offer a unique and empowering alternative? A haven where women could escape the constant childbearing and patriarchal control of secular life to pursue spiritual and intellectual goals? The truth is, it was likely both, for your sister. The process of entering the convent was a kind of wedding in itself. She was escorted to the abbey by her family with all the pomp of a royal bride. She would have brought with her an enormous dowry, not of lands for a husband, but of gold, silver, and estates to enrich the convent. Her ceremony of taking the veil mirrored a marriage in many ways. She would have been dressed in a fine white gown, made her vows at the altar, and received a ring, symbolizing her eternal union as a bride of Christ. Then, in a moment of profound symbolism, the abbess would have taken a pair of golden scissors and cut her long hair, the source of worldly vanity, severing her ties to her old life. She was reborn, given a new name in Christ, into a new family composed entirely of women. Life behind the high stone walls of the abbey is not, for a royal nun, one of grim poverty. Your sister will not be scrubbing floors or tending pigs. Her royal status and magnificent dowry afford her a life of relative comfort. She has private chambers, perhaps even a small personal staff of servants. She is exempt from the harshest manual labour performed by the lower-born nuns. Her life is one of order and tranquillity, governed not by the chaotic demands of the court, but by the gentle, rhythmic ringing of the bells, calling the sisters to prayer 7 times a day. It is a life of contemplation, but not of idleness. Between the hours of prayer, she has a world of opportunity rarely available to her married counterparts. The convent scriptorium is a centre of literacy and learning. She will spend her days reading not just scripture, but Latin texts, history, and philosophy. She will learn to write, and perhaps she will be trained in the delicate, beautiful art of manuscript illumination, spending months hunched over a single page, painting intricate, jewel-tone letters with a squirrel hair brush and real gold leaf. The quiet of the cloister is a world away from your court, and sometimes you imagine the appeal of a life without constant political manoeuvring. And in this world run by women, for women, there exists a unique ladder of power. A pious, intelligent, and well-connected royal nun could aspire to the highest office, that of the abbess. The mainstream reality of the medieval period is that the abbess of a great royal convent was one of the most powerful women in all of Christendom. These princess abbesses were not just spiritual mothers, they were mighty feudal lords. They controlled vast swathes of land, oversaw entire towns and villages, minted their own currency, and dispensed their own justice. They owed allegiance to no local bishop or duke. Their master was the Pope in Rome. An invitation from the abbess of a royal abbey was a summons that even the greatest lords in the land could not ignore. She was the CEO of a vast, wealthy, and influential corporation, possessing an autonomy and authority that you, as a queen consort, could only dream of. Of course, for some, even this was not a deep enough renunciation of the world. You hear whispers of a more extreme and quirky path. The anchoress, this was a woman who, after years of monastic life, would choose to be permanently sealed into a small stone cell, or anchor hold, usually built against the wall of a church. She would have a small window through which she could receive food and speak to visitors, and another, a squint, that looked directly upon the church altar. A funeral mass would be read for her as she was enclosed, symbolizing her death to the world. It seems a horrific fate, but to the medieval mind, it was the height of spiritual devotion. These women were seen as living saints, and kings and commoners alike would make pilgrimage to their small windows to seek their prayers and their wisdom. You fold your sister's letter and look at your son. Your path was to create a dynasty. Hers is to pray for its soul. Her world is built of stone, parchment, and prayer. Yours is built of alliances, whispers, and the weight of a crown. Both are lives of service, of duty, of immense restriction, and both, in their own very different ways, are arenas where a woman could find a voice and a power all her own. The years pass. The rhythm of your life, once so fraught with anxiety and the pressure to produce an heir, has settled into a pattern of confident, quiet influence. Your son is growing into a young man, the future of the kingdom secure in his existence. You have mastered the court, built your networks, and earned the respect, and perhaps the fear of the great lords. You are no longer just the consort. You are the queen, a permanent and powerful fixture in the political landscape. But in a world governed by the fragility of human life, no stability is permanent. The one event that will irrevocably shatter your world and redefine your existence is inevitable. One day, the king, your husband, the man who's been the center of your universe for decades, will die. It may come suddenly, a fatal wound on the battlefield or a hunting accident, or it may come slowly, a creeping sickness that drains the life from him over months, turning the vibrant court into a hushed, anxious sick room. Your personal grief may be profound and genuine, a sorrow for the man you have shared a life with, but you are not allowed the luxury of simple mourning. As the king's life fades, 100 political questions ignite. The moment his last breath is drawn, the kingdom is adrift. His powerful brothers and cousins, the ambitious dukes you have spent years keeping in check, will see this as their moment. Your primary, all-consuming thought is not of your loss, but of your son's inheritance and of your own survival. Your first duty as a widow is to perform your grief publicly and flawlessly. The kingdom must see your unwavering loyalty to the memory of their dead king and, by extension, to his dynasty and his son. A quirky but essential part of this is the ritual of deep mourning. You're expected to retreat into a profound seclusion, often into a suite of rooms draped entirely in black cloth, black on the walls, the furniture, the bed. This is the chambre de deuil, the chamber of mourning. Here, in this dark enclosed space, you will receive condolences, but you are largely cut off from the world, a living symbol of sorrow. It is a powerful piece of political theatre. Your withdrawal and your black weeds are a constant, visible reminder to the court that the king's line continues, that your loyalty is absolute, and that you are the grieving mother of the new rightful king. What happens next depends entirely on the age of your son. If he's still a child, a boy of 8 or 12 or even 16, you may find yourself elevated to the most powerful position a medieval woman could ever hope to hold, that of regent, with the king a minor. The royal council may appoint you to rule in his name until he comes of age. Suddenly, you are no longer whispering advice in the bedchamber. You're sitting at the head of the council table. You're hearing petitions, signing royal edicts with your own seal, making decisions about war, taxes, and justice. You are the de facto ruler of the entire kingdom. But this power is precarious. Your husband's brothers will argue that a woman is unfit to rule, that they, as royal men, should be the ones to guide the young king. You will face constant challenges to your authority, plots to undermine you, and the ever-present danger of a coup. And this is where historians still argue. Was a female regent seen as a true sovereign, a ruler in her own right during her tenure, or was she always considered a mere placeholder, a temporary vessel for a power that could only ever be legitimately wielded by a man? First her husband and then her son, if, however, your son is already an adult when his father dies. Your path is very different. The crown passes directly to him. You are no longer the queen consort. You are now the queen mother, or the dowager queen. This is a role of immense respect, but of diminished direct power. The first lady of the court is now your son's young wife, just as you once took that place from your own mother-in-law. You watch another young foreign princess begin the same journey that you did, and you must gracefully cede the spotlight. But you are far from powerless. A key mainstream legal provision for a royal widow was her dower. This was a significant portfolio of lands, castles, and revenues that were legally yours for the rest of your life, to support you in your widowhood. This dower makes you an independently wealthy and powerful noblewoman. You are no longer at the centre of government, but you are a great landowner, a respected elder stateswoman whose advice is still sought, and a potential power broker in your own right. Your political career isn't over, it has just entered a new, and sometimes awkward, phase of semi-retirement. There are, of course, darker potential fates. If you fail to produce a son, or if your husband's dynasty is overthrown in the chaotic aftermath of his death, your position is perilous. Your dower lands may be confiscated. Your political protection evaporates. If you are lucky, you will be allowed to retire to a small remote castle to live out your days in quiet obscurity. If you are seen as a threat, a rallying point for loyalists of the old regime, you may be forced to take the veil, ending your days in the very abbey you once contemplated, your life coming full circle in a way you never intended. The gilded cage of the court is replaced by the stone one of the cloister. You stand at a precipice, your future branching into a dozen possibilities. Regent, Queen Mother, forgotten exile, the death of your husband does not end your story. It simply begins a new, and often more dangerous, chapter. You have traded the crown of a consort for the heavy black veil of a widow, but you have learned over a lifetime that the greatest power is not always found in the glittering gold of a crown, but sometimes in the deep, unreadable shadows of a veil. The game has a new set of rules, and you must learn them quickly if you wish to survive. The black veil of widowhood has given way to the soft grey of old age. The years, which once moved with the agonizing slowness of a diplomatic negotiation, have begun to blur and race away. You are the dowager queen, the queen grandmother, a living relic from a bygone era. Your Eid, the boy whose birth secured your position, is now a man with grey in his beard. Perhaps he too has passed, and your grandson now wears the crown. The court is a whirlwind of new faces, new fashions, and new political concerns that seem strangely distant to you. The children of the men who were your fiercest rivals now bow to you with a reverence reserved for historical monuments. You have outlived them all, which brings a certain quiet satisfaction. You watch your young granddaughter, her face bright with the nervous excitement you remember so well, being presented to an ambassador from a foreign land, and you see the great repeating wheel of your own life turning once more. You have seen everything. You've been a frightened child bride, a celebrated mother, a subtle political player, a powerful regent. Now, there's only one chapter left to write. Your life. Once a raging river of duty and drama has slowed to a gentle, meandering stream. Your days are spent in quiet pursuits, listening to your chaplain read from the scriptures, walking slowly in the gardens you had planted half a century ago, sharing stories with your grandchildren who look at you with wide, uncomprehending eyes when you speak of a world that no longer exists. When the final illness comes, it is not a surprise, it is an expected guest. Your great state bed, the same one where you gave birth to a king, becomes your final world. The castle grows quiet. The usual bustle of the court recedes, a respectful hush descending upon the halls. Your family gathers, their faces etched with a solemn love. The archbishop comes to administer the last rites, the ancient Latin prayers, a final comforting murmur that has followed you your entire life, from your nursery to your deathbed. There is no more fear, no more ambition, only a quiet letting go. Your long, stranger, and extraordinary journey is finally over. But for a queen, death is not an end. It is a final, magnificent state occasion. Your body is embalmed, dressed in the richest robes, and lies in state as the entire kingdom mourns. A quirky and final attempt to capture your earthly likeness might be made. A death mask, a cast of your face taken in wax or plaster, so that the sculptor who carves your effigy can create a true and lasting image. Your funeral procession is the grandest spectacle the realm has ever seen. Your coffin, borne on a chariot, followed by every great lord and lady. As the common people weep in the streets for the queen they knew for a lifetime, you are laid to rest in a magnificent tomb in the great cathedral, a carved stone figure of you lying serenely beside your husband, your hands clasped in prayer for all eternity. You hope the sculptor was kind. Your most enduring legacy, however, is one you carefully planned and paid for. This is a mainstream and vital concern for any medieval monarch. The fate of your soul. Throughout your life, and especially in your wealthy widowhood, you have engaged in pious works, you have given vast sums to the poor, but more importantly, you have founded institutions. Perhaps you endowed a new college at a university, or founded a great abbey in the countryside. The purpose of this charity was twofold. It was a testament to your piety and power on earth, but its primary function was to ensure the salvation of your soul. The central duty of the monks in your abbey or the scholars in your college is to pray for you, their founder, every single day, in perpetuity. You've traded your earthly wealth for an eternal chorus of prayer, a spiritual insurance policy against the fires of purgatory. With your soul provided for, what of your story? How will you be remembered by the living? You are now at the mercy of the chroniclers. In monasteries across the land, monks are dipping their quills in ink, writing the history of your time. And this is the great final uncertainty, a debate historians still wrestle with. Can these accounts, written exclusively by religious men, ever truly capture the reality of a powerful woman's life? Will they praise you as a saint, a pious and obedient queen who is a model of feminine virtue? Will they celebrate you as a peacemaker, the wise diplomat who bound two kingdoms together? Or will they condemn you as a meddling, ambitious she-wolf, A foreign influence who manipulated her husband and overstepped the bounds of her sex. Your complex, contradictory life will be flattened and simplified, polished into a cautionary tale or a hagiographic legend. The real you, the frightened girl, the determined woman, is likely to be lost between the lines of their biased prose. And so your memory fractures into 1,000 pieces. Some of it is captured in stone and prayer, some is trapped, distorted, in the brittle pages of a chronicle, some may live on in the songs of minstrels, who turn your long life into a simple ballad sung by the fire on a winter's night. Perhaps your most common legacy is the one you would never notice. Your name, given to countless newborn girls by mothers who admired their good queen. A quiet, unassuming echo of your existence. You were a princess, you were a queen, you were a piece of a game, and you were a player. You were a symbol, and you were a woman. Your life was a story, and now it is finally told. Now the story is over. The great tapestry of this long and eventful life has been fully woven, and it is time to let the images fade, to let the echoes of the past fall silent, the weight of the crown, the cold of the stone walls, the whispers of the court. All of it can now recede into the soft darkness. The journey was long, moving from the constrained world of a royal nursery through the treacherous currents of a foreign court to the quiet wisdom of old age. You have felt the scratch of the woolen swaddling clothes and the heavy silk of a wedding gown. You have tasted the strange and spiced food of a royal feast and heard the silent prayers of a hopeful queen. Now that world melts away, leaving only the gentle sound of the fan, the softness of your pillow, the steady, peaceful rhythm of your own breathing. There are no more duties to fulfill, no more dangers to navigate. The great bell of the cathedral is silent. The last candle in the chamber has been snuffed out. There is only stillness and the deep and quiet comfort of rest. Let your own thoughts drift away now, like leaves on a slow-moving stream, carrying you gently and peacefully towards the restorative shores of sleep. The history is written, the tale is told, and all that remains is a profound and welcome peace.